Devil, my friend. I think we should have a little quick conversation about everybody's respectful celestial abodes, where it be my little coffin where I lay my head at night, or at times that you feel that you just want to go back down to make sure that hell's not getting out of whack while you are away. Let's talk about Vampire and Devil's newest partnership in Twisted Vines, our dear friends, Chris and Sarah and Cadaver.
Oh yeah, you like scary stuff, you like horror decor, come and check out Twisted Vines. They make all the kind of cool shit, all for your house, all kinds of scary shit. They love it. You like to bring back the horror, you want to scare your neighbors, you want to conjure up a friend to talk to, you want to conjure up somebody bad, you want to do some bad stuff to them, you go to Twisted Vines and get some of their merch.
Absolutely, for sure. Everything is completely handmade by them. So if you need a little friend, maybe a round set abode, maybe you want to conduct a little evil towards a friend that was a friend, maybe no longer a friend. They have voodoo dolls they can do for you to allow for such activities. But you know how much we love our Ouija boards, my friend, and they make all of those by hand. They took care of your beloved vampire with a nice Nosferatu board, but the devil, he happens to be a Munsters fan. And not only do they do boards as traditional rectangles, but they can put a little bit of coffin flair in them.
Oh yeah, look at that coffin shape Munster board. Yeah, you wanna conjure up Mr. Herman? You wanna ask him how Pet Cemetery was? You can do it on this board. Oh yeah.
Absolutely, my friend. So again, thank you so much to Twisted Vines for partnering with the Vampire and Devil podcast, and make sure that you Fangs and Infernos are checking them out on their Facebook page, on their Instagram pages, and making sure that you are checking them out as they move around the country, showing their craft off at all of the various horror cons and oddities expos that they love to do. So absolutely, my friend, of course, man, horns up, fangs out for our friends at Twisted Vines.
Oh yeah.
All right there, Fangs and Infernos. All right there, ghouls and fiends alike. We've got another fun discussion to talk to you about, don't we, my friend, as we talk a little bit about something that might be a parody, a similarity, a ripoff of a dearly beloved discussion that we had not that long ago, but some eerie similarities as we take a little trip back to 1980s on this episode of the Alphabets of Horror, as we talk a little bit about the letter M, however that works out.
Yeah, it's time to get our motel, hotel, Holiday Inn time. And who doesn't like a little motel hell low?
Absolutely, brother. Sure. And before we kind of get into the breakdown, synopsis, and all that stuff, one thing I think is just kind of fun is, like, I couldn't help but get the feeling it was so fun to revisit this movie, because I remember this movie from back in the day, and I always liked it, and it was fun, and there's a lot of camp to it, all of which we're going to discuss. But especially, rewatching it now, a few hundred years later, I can't help but feel that this movie is strangely, like, ill-titled. Like,
yeah.
I can't really say that they really made a very good choice in titles, because while the motel plays into it, I mean, I guess, but there were no real kills or tortures or anything involving the motel whatsoever. It was really, it's probably better off being called, like, booby trap hell.
Yeah, I mean, other than the one guest that we'll talk about, they're really the only people that is mainly this Yeah, it's definitely more of like it's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is, you know what I mean? It's definitely, it's more, shit, Eaten Alive is more motel hell than this movie was. So it was like, I'm kind of curious on, like, I mean, maybe just because, like, like I said, in the movie, the motel is actually called Motel Hello.
Yeah.
And the O keeps on going down, which turns it into Motel Hell. But like I said, I mean, I guess they could have done it anyway. But yeah, it's like, I mean, not that it doesn't have its hellish, undertow in this movie as we talk a little bit about it. But yeah, it's like one of those ones where, like, Motel Hell, you would think of more of like, I mean, even like Devil's Rejects that has like only a hotel scene or a motel scene in it for like 10 minutes, still is more Motel Hellish than this movie is. So yeah, it was like, it is such a weird hotel because you would think like Motel Hell is maybe like an updated version of Psycho,
Yeah.
where you have this people who are running this motel and they're killing people and all this kind of stuff like that, which theoretically speaking it sort of is. It's these people are this I mean, you find out that brother and sister. I always, for the longest time, I always thought they were married and then, or like, husband and wife, but apparently they're brother and sister, which was kind of made it a little weirder. But
Yeah.
it's like, you would think that, you know, a different title, but I don't know, maybe they were gonna name it something else and they didn't, and then they just kind of just came up with Motel Hell real quick. But cool thing about it was that Toby's, speaking of Toby Hooper, we can straight up, one of the things I found out about, I didn't know that Toby Hooper at one point was supposed to direct this movie too, which would have
Yeah.
just been, which would have, fit in with his, I think it would have been probably be a little shot a little more different, but it still had that kind of Toby Hooper feel kind of to it. So, like I said, he has no, no, like we just said about Eating Alive and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, I would expect a hotel to be, but yeah, like I said, I mean, this movie's got everything you want in it, man. It's got stupid comedy, it's got hardcore '80s camp, it's got meat samplers that only cost a couple dollars, which is like cheap as shit. You can tell this is an '80s movie, and the tax inflation hasn't hit them yet because that shit would have cost here's a huge meat sampler where that's only gonna cost you like $3, and that shit would be like 30-40 bucks now. But
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, what's not to love about this movie? It's got everything. It's a cool idea too, because it's not like it's the first movie to dive into a hotel that's killing people and stuff like that. And it's not even the first movie that's kind of using, when you find out that they're using the people to make their meats and stuff like that, like we were talking about with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, with that secret barbecue sauce. So, how do you guys make that good sauce? How you make that good barbecue? Well, it's in the meat. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much how this is, it's in the meat. It's all about the meat. But yeah, but I just love the way that they do it in this movie, where the garden varieties that they do in this movie is fun.
No, absolutely. And just staying briefly with like Toby, because that's something that I learned about this movie as well, is that this movie was originally, um, the script was like looking to be picked up by like Universal. Like they were interested in it, and then for whatever the reason was, Universal decided to drop the project, and that's actually what caused Toby to leave. Is because with Universal no longer being interested in the project. I don't know if it was like due to contractual obligations or the fact that Universal is such a big, production name, that he knew that there would be a good budget behind it to maybe do what he wanted, in this way or the other things. If we were to have the opportunity, of course we won't be able to, but if we were to have the opportunity to talk to Toby, that would be a cool little thing to discuss and be like, hey, we had heard that Universal dropped the project for Motel Hell at the time you were tapped to direct, and then you ended up leaving the project as well after that. What can you tell us about that? And it might even be that simple. It might just be like, well, with the bigger studio would have come a bigger budget. And there were a lot of things I would have liked to have done that I didn't find necessarily would be feasible on a lower budget. So, who knows exactly the reasons behind that. But Motel Hell is cool. Like, like I said, the title it's ill-titled, but it's like one of those kind of like, well, yeah, but no, because again, just like you said, my friend, it's the name of the hotel. It's just the fact that the O and hello is blinking out. So it works that, yeah, this is their 30-year business. They've been running this thing for 30 years. So, that's the business they're attached to, Motel Hello. The O keeps blinking out, which, ironically, makes it kind of hellish considering they're kind of Sweeney Todding people. And so, I mean, I get it. It's just kind of one of those things where if you don't know anything about the movie, you're probably expecting, like you said, a Norman Bates kind of situation that you really don't get. I mean, you get it for a moment with one kill, but it's really nothing more than kind of like their side hustle, or I guess technically more accurately, like their cover, So it's just kind of interesting when it comes to that. But it is weird, man, too, because like Rory Calhoun plays, Uncle Vincent in this movie, and it's weird, man, because like Vincent Vincent the character is a great villain, but Rory Calhoun's not a villain, and the character is so evil, but I couldn't help but feel that Rory's too nice to be that guy. And it was cool. I think he did a good job, and he's, very established, like so many people know, but it's that kind of thing where it's like, it worked for the character. He kind of did what he needed to do, but I don't necessarily think that, his chops were right for that particular movie. You and I were talking recently when we were hanging out about a movie that we both saw recently, and me feeling that one of the casting, while they were a major star of the movie, I didn't really like the casting of the actor or actress, because I didn't really feel that they were ready for a role like that. It's not that I thought they were bad. It's not that I thought they dragged down the movie. Just being a fan of that particular genre, I'm a little bit more of a dissector as I'm watching that kind of stuff. And I just didn't personally think that they were seasoned enough for that role. Rory is kind of the other side of the coin. While I think he did a good job with the Uncle Vincent character, I couldn't help but have a little bit of me that's like, yeah, but it's like, shoot 'em up, bang, bang, Rory Calhoun, though.
Yeah, I mean, even throughout the movie, like I said, yeah, he's a bad guy per se. He's killing these people and planting them in his garden, and they're cutting their throats so they can marinate them and use them for their meat and stuff like that. But yet then again, he's, he takes out the old guy and the girl on the bicycle, and then ends up trying to falling in love with the girl, and was being nice and sweet with her and stuff like that. So he kind of had that, where she, the sister was like getting mad and tries to drown her, and he comes in and tries, and saves her and stuff like that. So it's like you almost kind of feel like maybe he isn't that bad of a guy, and then all of a sudden, once she starts realizing what's going on, and she doesn't like it, he's like, oh, oh well, I'll just turn her into meat.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's another one of those, like, sinister styles, sinister designs, but also that crazy, like those crazy concepts. And especially at that time too, it's subject matter. This movie taps into subject matter that it's very taboo, and it's very tricky at that time. Like now, trust me, stuff like this is still taboo nowadays. People are heavily frowned upon when it comes to that kind of stuff, and it hits people's different sensibilities. But again, you go back to movies like The Exorcist, that wasn't that long before this movie. Movies like A Clockwork Orange, that wasn't long before this movie, and so on and so forth. But there's that really kind of crazy scene, like you had mentioned, where you find out that they're brother and sister, where it's kind of like she's trying to seduce him, or just kind of like fuck with him, or just kind of ooh la la him. And all Vincent really does is just kind of like it gently kiss her on like her forehead, like very brotherly love kind of thing, like a very, proper just show of affection in that way. But she's just tits out, man.
Yeah. She's not having it. And then, I mean, like I said, and I love, the campiness and stuff like that, and like I said, the horror, and just like I said, I mean, them going in, like, into the garden and kind of, hypnotizing them, and then, strangling them to break their necks when, and stuff like, it's just so weird. It's like, you would think, you see, like, in Texas Chainsaw, when he's getting people, put them on the meat hooks and
Yes.
doing this and doing that. You kind of get that, but, like, you're like, why are they putting these people in a garden for a while? Like, what's the whole reasoning for having these people in dirt, and them eating this, like, kind of like Miracle Grow kind of food that they're doing, but they're cutting their throats, so all they can do is kind of gargle and kind of, and it doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why are they doing this? But it was a cool effect and stuff like that. And then, you're like, why wouldn't they just kill them right up? And when it gets towards the, end of the movie, it kind of bites them in the ass that, that they planted these people in the garden, because eventually, they figure out, hey, I can squirm and worm a little bit and get out, and then it becomes sort of like a zombie almost movie, where it's these guys is going after them, and, like I said, because their throats are all cut, so that all I can do is just gargle, and they go after them, and then yeah, it's like, yeah, it's just like such a weird. It was so weird. It was just like, and then you had the guy that came and visit, that was like, the meat, health inspector guy, and all of a sudden he's like, pissed because of something, and then he tries to break in. Like, who breaks into, like, I'm gonna go and see how what their secret is behind this, weird bush that's not really, is it, there's something behind this, or, that it was just so weird. Like, their gardening thing was just like, just, it was just like I said, it was just a lot of weird concepts all mixed in together with that camp. But, like, there's just something about Motel Hell that's just, like, in paper, if you think about it, you write it down, you're like, okay, this is what has this and this and that. You're like, this movie should be stupid, shouldn't be good at all. But there's just something that's just fun about this movie, that when you watch, you're like, it shouldn't be as entertaining as it is, but yet it's just an entertaining movie. It's just, and like I said, you can't beat, like you said, you got some good actors and actresses. You got Beulah Ballbreaker in it from Porky's, and,
Yeah.
it's like I said, he's got some weird campiness throughout it. You have those, the band members that are driving around in their van and stuff like that, and it's like that cheesy, like, they're like horrible band guys, but they're all like, yeah, man, we were cool, we're rocking it, got this punk kind of look to them, and it was just so bad.
It really is. But I mean, but it is cool, like, concept. Like, it's fun, It's one of those things, though, because I like certain castings. I thought the fact that, like, Wolfman Jack was in the movie, which I thought was, like, really cool. God rest his soul. And it's just, it was an interesting character, because, again, he's got that kind of look, for, like, a dirty, cannibalistic, or just kind of like, you know out in the woods hillbilly kind of thing to it. But it was just an interesting casting on that movie, like seeing his name in, like, the credits, or seeing it in that, like, that box they put on posters, or the back of a movie that has, like, the studio and the cast and the director and the producer and blah blah blah. Seeing Wolfman Jack, like, in that, it reminds me a lot of The Shining, where you had Scatman Carruthers in there, and you're just kind of like, huh, because there's certain people that have, like, those unique names, and what they do, and they have these secondary careers, but then you see them in these roles, and you can't help but be like, yeah, that's interesting that they did that. It's kind of interesting that they were down to do this project. And the funny thing is about comparing those two is there's almost a nod to said movie, as, like, almost an Easter egg in Motel Hell.
Yeah. Which is, like you said. Yeah, I mean, as far as Wolfman Jack being in it, I mean, what other role than a preacher this preacher, crazy over the top preacher kind of guy that they periodically put throughout the movie, with what's on the TV, and then then him coming into it. Like, it's just a perfect he plays such a perfect role for this, like, this preacher that's going to be coming out, like, and then it's like, but you would think, you're like, okay, this guy's going to have a huge role, and then he's like literally in the movie for like 2-3 minutes, that tops. It's like, well, you're like, what the hell, like. But yeah, I like, we were talking, but you were talking about the the Shining reference, with Scatman and stuff like that. Yeah, I just thought it was funny, dude, because like we were talking about, there's sort of an Easter egg thing, but people who are horror fans would know. But then you kind of go, okay, because like there, in the movie, there's these two little twins, and they're kind of in outfits that would be very similar. And I get it, it's not like The Shining were the first people to ever have twin girls in a dress, ever since The Shining, every time you see two girls in a dress that are similar, you think of The Shining. And so it's the first thing you think. You're like, oh shit, The Shining. And then you go, well, wait, this actually came out before The Shining.
Yeah.
So they really couldn't have done it for, like I said, it's not like it's the first movie to ever use, two twin girls. But it's just cool how us horror fanatics will see something. You could watch a movie, because like The Shining came out in 1980 or 81 or something like that.
81.
81 or 82. So you can watch a movie from the 60s. Yeah, you can watch a movie from the 60s and see two girls in dresses and go, ooh, Shining twins, even though that movie came out 20 years before The Shining. You just automatically, that image of like I said, the two girls kind of holding hands together, and them being identical twins, so them being dressed the same, you just automatically all assume it. The only time they really never did that is in the 80s, because 80s was all about twins with the juicy fruits and the double mint commercials. But then again, those were grown adults, females and men like that. But like I said, yeah, it's weird whenever you automatically assume that that image of The Shining. And like I said, this is it's an Easter egg that predates the actual Shining movie.
Yeah. It's just
although with Stanley Kubrick, it probably was actually filmed before Motel Hell, because Stanley Kubrick, took like 900 years to edit that movie and do all that stuff. So probably actually was filmed before Motel Hell, but it didn't come out until afterwards.
yeah, that movie was probably done back in like 72. Like, but no, it's just funny like that. But yeah, it's like, it's that kind of like thing, because it's like you've got, because nobody watched The Shining and thought to them, when it came to the Grady's, thought, oh wow, I wonder if they were inspired by Motel Hell. Nobody thought that, myself included. Like, no chance, despite the fact that the movie came out, half a year earlier. It's just like, it just kind of doesn't work that way. And even all the way up till nowadays, they don't even necessarily have to wear dresses. But if I see young twins in just matching outfits, they make me feel just very Shining every time, like no matter what. But it's funny like that. But yeah, like I said too, with like Wolfman, and like you were referencing as well, is like he's this short character, but a memorable character, because again, you've got this down and dirty movie. Wolfman's such a unique look, but it's so funny because it reminds me a lot of Ozzy Osbourne in Trick or Treat, who's in the movie for one scene, but is a prominent fixture on the most common cover of the movie, like DVD of the movie. And that goes for Gene Simmons as well. Again, star power, name power, I get it, totally, for sure. Gene, I really do. He's actually kind of a major player in that movie. Ozzy is completely irrelevant in that movie. He's literally also playing a preacher, by the way, just giving his opinion about, like, Satanism and music. Pot calling the kettle black. It's just funny where it's that same kind of thing, where it's like you've got this character who becomes kind of a prominent face based off look, but he's just there to fill a scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, this the whole craziness in this movie, and then when it gets, it gets towards the end of, like I said, the end of the movie, where the vegetable potatoes that come out of the ground and they start going after everybody, and you get into this, into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre slaughter room and stuff like that, and you see the pigs hanging and meat hanging, you see the bodies hanging in hooks, and there's the smoker and stuff like that, and he's just like, he gets, the main dude, he gets it, in the belly, and he's bleeding, and he's just like, oh man, it's just like the whole entire time, I wanted him to like I said, even though this predates Texas Chainsaw 2, I just wanted him to like lick himself and be like, oh my damn, I'm tasty, just like like Sawyer did. And I was waiting for that. I'm like, what? But yeah, it's just like it's just, and then it kind of just like ends. I don't know. This movie just ends.
It's weird, dude. Before we get right into the fact that it just ends and stuff like that, but there's one other thing we got to talk about, because it's just too funny. Is like the one thing that nobody's ever going to debate when it comes to slasher movies is just the clear evidence of just stupidity, just characters who are just kind of on a level of kind of being tards, where it's like, wait, okay, like they make fun of it clear as day in something like Scary Movie, where you've got the bimbo who manages to trip over a leaf as they're being chased by the slasher. Can we take a split second, though, to talk about tell me you're going to poison yourself without telling me that you're going to poison yourself when something is right in front of you that's going to kill you?
Yeah. I was like, that was the whole point, like I said, it was just the oddness of it. Like, I get it. Like, when you're in these movies and someone puts something in your drink, you don't really notice it, like whether it's a drug or something like that, it kind of dissolves or whatever like that. Yeah, you don't really notice it that much. But like, this one was just like took like the automatic like thing of it. It's like, taking a glass, like she's drinking champagne, which is like as clear as this water is. Then all of a sudden, she goes to drink it. You see everybody else is drinking theirs. So you can tell everybody else has the, the golden, yellow color of champagne. And hers is like Baja Blast Mountain Dew green. Like, it's just like,
It's like
absinthe.
absinthe. It's like
this
absinthe.
Totally normal.
It looked like fucking absinthe. I was like,
yeah.
what the fuck,
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at that, being like, wait. Look, I was like, look, you can get away with that shit if they're like we were talking about glasses recently. It's like, dude, you can get away with that shit with like this, because like, it's gonna be dark enough, and it's not like that. It's not like the inside of that place was all that well lit, and either. So like, you can kind of get away with that shit. But if you're drinking it out of like straight glassware, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, look, when it comes to our peeps, dude, we suspend a lot of reality when it comes to loving what we love in this genre. But can we at least acknowledge that we deserved a little more respect than that kind of level of our character being stupid?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't help but feel a small bit of like monetary like insulting when it came to that, because it was like the character wasn't blind.
Yeah.
The character,
it's like you swear you didn't put anything in this?
we wouldn't be talking right now. But I'm like, there's just a certain amount of like, give your audience a little credit.
Yeah.
Give your characters you're about to off a little bit of credit. They ain't surviving regardless. They're gonna die or get poisoned or get gurgle-fied or whatever. Like, give them a little bit of credit, or even just play us for saps where everybody else is drinking their their champagne out of like a flute or a wine glass, and just humor me by putting the victims in like a coffee mug. Like, at least with that, I'm still going to laugh at you. I'm still going to make fun of you, and we'd still be ripping apart that scene right now. But at least with the attempt of, if you put that thing in like a dark coffee mug, you're at least like, oh, okay, well, I guess the rest of the glasses were in the dishwasher or in the sink. Like, you can sort of defend the move. No, man. Not
Yeah.
not happy little bubbly champagne versus a glass of absinthe and then wondered why you died.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, like I said, I mean, I understand you're in the moment, you're drinking champagne, but like I said, like you said, I mean, you're getting ready to drink it, and like I said, it's a clear glass and it's green. It's like I said, it's not even like it was somewhat of the same color. I can understand if it was poison, but looked exactly
Yeah.
like everybody else's drink. Like I said, it was like drinking Mountain Dew all of a sudden in there. Be like, what the hell? Like, did you put Mountain Dew in my drink or something like that? And be like, no, no. It's still like, it's like everybody else drinking Sprite.
Yes.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh, you want a Sprite? Yeah, sure. And everybody else has got their cups and it's clear cups and it's, you can see it's everybody else's clear Sprite, and all of a sudden you got the one cup, and all of a sudden it's green. You're gonna be like, so am I not drinking Sprite?
Like,
Did you run out of Sprite?
yeah.
You're gonna notice it. Like, why is mine green and everybody else is clear?
Yeah, like you're drinking it. It's at your eye level. Like it. Oh, okay. We
Yeah.
gotta stop. We gotta stop. I just look. Movie's so fun. I love it to death. I really do. But like, okay, this we got it. We gotta stop because I'm just gonna keep getting playfully madder. Like, so let's yeah. So as we get back to the Sopranos-esque just blackout as the movie just stops, and then it's just okay. Credits. Let's talk a little bit about the obituaries, my friend. So let's start off with you, man. Like, how do you see this movie? Because we both collectively agree that we like this movie. It's fun. It's enjoyable. But I don't foresee it being a high ranker for us either.
I mean, like I said, in all honesty, yeah, this movie should fall in that like 3 to 5 range normally. I mean, like I said, to me, I'll bump it up a little bit more just because I love it. It's a fun movie. I've watched it multiple times. I'll rewatch it 9 million times. I love the fact that we never got a sequel to this movie
Yeah.
whatsoever, which was awesome. Even though I'm always for sequels, it's like, yeah, this was dumb enough that there's no reason to have a sequel, even though they theoretically could have had a sequel in this
Yeah.
movie because the sister survives, the woman survives. I mean, does she kill the other girl and then, or do they both become lesbian lovers and continue on this hotel or whatever
Train.
like that? So it's like, there's questions, but yeah, I love that they don't answer it. But like I said, yeah, in general, yeah, this movie shouldn't be fun. But like again, I mean, just like with, when we pitched this, the M movie, we mixed it up with some other cool M movies and, the Fangs and the Infernos and all the ghouls, went from Motel Hell straight up. It was like basically like Motel Hell had like 7 or 8 votes and everybody else had like either 0 or 1, you know what I mean? So it definitely, everybody was all about Motel Hell. So you can definitely tell like people who are into horror movies and into camp, this is one of those ones that like is a lot of people's favorites. Even like I said, even though this movie shouldn't be anybody's favorites, it's to that point where you're like, this movie's utterly stupid, but yet just works together. And like I said, I mean, I love the characters, I love the actors in this movie, I love the stupidness, I love like, she's like, pops her fluid. Oh, I can't swim, and then tries to like drown her. Like she's like, oh, I was just panicking. Yeah, I'm just panicking while I'm trying to hold you down and drown you in this river. It's just like the stupidness. And like I said, the putting the people in the garden and, you know, it's like, why do you need to do that for? And then it's like these ones, you know, and like I said, then it doesn't even make any sense either. Like, 'cause you have you know, the guy that was a motorcycle with the girl that he was in there, and then you had the other guy that was in there, but yet the band guys were done and ready to be plucked before anybody else had been in that garden longer than them. So it didn't even make any sense of who's getting plucked from the garden first. Doesn't even make any sense either. So it's just like, these guys are good. And I'm like, wait, so if they're good and they've only been in the ground for a day, why are the people who are behind them that have been in there for a day or two, why aren't they already good? So it's like even the concept of their concept doesn't even make any sense. So it's just like
how is the band marinated enough?
yeah. So like I said, like
That's not real time.
Yeah, when you watch this movie, you end up having more questions than answers,
You
and
do.
so it's just like. But like I said, I mean, it's fun. It's the, you know, prime example of '80s horror camp. And like I said, I mean, yeah, it's not going to win any awards. It's not going to, like I said, it should be a low rating like some other movies that we've done. But I don't know. To me, it has a special place in my heart. I think it's just utterly stupid good. So you know, I'm going to give it a 6.
No, I'm with you, man, on that. It's cool. But yeah, the movie is so fun, but it's riddled with continuity errors. Like, just continuity errors galore. They might as well have one of the people wearing a digital watch. Like, it was like hilarious. But again, it's so fun. Yeah. It's like it should be in some of the 3 to 5 range conversations that we've had, but there's a certain amount of comedy genius to it. And I'm just with you on the score. Like, there are certain points that are worth adding for the sake of just comical aspects, uniqueness, maybe a interesting story. And also there are some movies like this where there's just a certain amount of just like warm, fuzzy love you kind of can't help from this movie or from any movie that you're just going to get. It's like, I can't give it a 4, you just look at it. You're like, I should be giving it a 4, but I don't have it in me. I don't have it in me to give it a 4.
Yeah.
But look, it's fun. It's flirty. I'm like you. I've seen it a bunch. I'm going to see it a bunch more. It's great. It's fun. Like, it's so weird to have Tobe Hooper as the potential director coming off Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a movie that's very Texas Chainsaw-ish. But I will say, though, Devil, to be honest, it's probably good that we didn't get that, because we probably, well, let me rephrase. We definitely wouldn't have gotten the Motel hell that we got. But there's a good chance that while, yes, this movie has so much uniqueness to it, there's so much that is very similar to like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre in its own right, that it might have been a little too close to just be enjoyed, where I think Toby showed in the long run, like we had discussed, he had plenty of genius in him and fresh ideas and great stuff to have a wonderful career that he had. And I don't think that would have been marred or tarnished in any way in the long run. But I'll be honest, I could maybe understand that he may have suffered in the early 80s a little bit of growing pains had he put out a movie that would have been like universally compared to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but on like a heavy level, like an elite level. So maybe in the big picture, with University pulling out and Toby going with them, maybe ultimately that's what gave us enough of a unique, different take to make Motel Hell fun and flirty and just kind of a cool little experience. But I'm with you, Devil. I think it's the way. I think 6 is great. Where it's right there where it's below the solid, but it's not like a slap in the face to it, and it's not a waste of time. And that's the big thing. You can put your feet up for a couple of hours and just laugh, roll your eyes at time, but you're not going to be mad. So that's the way it's going to be. Ghouls, goblins, spooks, creeps, fangs, and infernos. Motel Hell on the obituaries, per the devil, per the vampire. It is a 6.0 on this Alphabets of Horror for the letter M. As always, thank you so much to our partners and sponsors. We love you guys and appreciate you guys. Horns up. Fangs out.
Devil, my friend,
Oh yeah.
I think if there's anybody who would know hot things, it's you.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's only right that you let our beloved Fangs know what they can order now, courtesy of Coney Island.
Oh yeah, man. We're in the kitchen. You know it gets hot in the kitchen. And what else better for your finger foods, for your tacos, for your victims that you may be eating? Maybe some sauce. And you should get it from the sauce boss. Coney Island sauce. Oh yeah. Get some of that good stuff. Oh yeah. You like to sprinkle it on anything. You can sprinkle it on your fingers. Sprinkle it on your toes. Sprinkle it on your hose. Anything you want to sprinkle goes.
Absolutely. We have partnered with Coney Island Saucery. Aaron is fantastic. We really appreciate all the love he's given to the show, and we're very, very pleased and honored to be a part of him. So he's got 4 sauces out of various heat levels to enjoy on all your various foods, but also for anybody who is already following his socials, our socials, or is about to be, newly announced partnership with Slayer.
Slayer, oh yeah.
Coney
It's gonna be
Island sauce.
burning to fire.
Oh yeah, Coney Island Saucery does have a Slayer brand hot sauce coming out very, very soon. And so make sure that you check that out for all your various levels of spice. This is Vampire and the Devil, Coney Island Saucery. Horns up, fangs out. Devil, my friend, I think it's time that we spill the tea. Brutalities. Vampire and Devil Podcast couldn't be more excited, more humbled to let you all know that we have partnered with very dear friends of ours for a long time in Brutalities. And there's so much great stuff, so many flavors, so much to enjoy, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about it. Isn't that right there, my friend?
Oh yeah, we like it hot. Of course the Inferno likes it hot. Do you like the hot tea? Well, you might as well get some brutality. Yeah, horror movies, puns, rock and roll, brutality's got it all.
Absolutely. When it comes to the vampire, you know that he's going to absolutely gravitate towards that Nosferatu or that Nosferatu brew. Absolutely a favorite of mine. And we got to show a little bit love to, by all means, the biggest franchise in horror right now. That would be Terrifier. So Brutalities has brought you Terrifier. But that's just from the vampire. The devil has some favorites of his own.
Oh yeah, do you like the movie Pumpkinhead? Well, how about a little pumpkin bread for your throat holes? And like I said, with the rock and roll fans and the horror fans, Wednesday 13 fans, do you like Wednesday 13 and tea? How about a couple of those? With the Summertime Suicide and a couple other ones too. So if you like Wednesday 13 and you like the tea and you like the brutalities, go to the website.
Absolutely. And so, of course, we like to look out for those that look out for us. We love you, Fangs. We love you, Infernos. But as a courtesy from Brutalities to be bestowed on you, we have that Vampire and Devil coupon code, don't we, my friend?
Oh yeah, you want to save a little dough, little cheddar, maybe buy some more shit? Go on the line, Brutalities, type in Vampire and Devil, and you get 10% off your order. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. So it's getting into the chilly weather. People need to warm their bones. They need to warm what little skin they may or may not have. But Brutalities is the way to get it done. So that's the way it's going to be because Vampire and Devil said so. Horns up, fangs out for Brutalities.
Hey, it's the devil again, and it's time for those horror comedies of the 90s. This time we're going to talk about 1992 with Sam Raimi's Army of Darkness. Oh, have you seen this? Yes, it's my boomstick. Shopping at Smart. Yes, Smart. Oh, you gotta love all the horror and the comedies and all the craziness and kookiness of this movie. It takes Evil Dead 1 and 2 and brings it to an extreme in medieval times. You gotta love it. And it's also got a cameo from our boy Bill Moseley in this movie. You gotta love it. Oh, yeah, you were sexy once, but now you're ugly. Give me some sugar, baby. Oh, yeah, check it out. Because the the devil said so.
We have covered quite a few topics in a little over a season now, as we are currently in season number 2. And there's a lot of back and forth, constant debate about when horror started, how it kind of got its foot in the door, what was the first of this, what was the first of that. But I will say, my friend, when it really comes to horror overall, I think a real solid starting point that seems to be, I kind of feel, relatively universally agreed upon are Universal monsters.
No, yeah, everybody, that's where in horror kind of like, in my opinion, kind of become popular, you know what I mean? There had been horror films before and stuff like that, but when Universal started doing these Universal monster films, and started, showing some of these characters and stuff like that, and these stories of the horror and the macabre and all that kind of stuff is when in my opinion, when horror started kicking in, you started realizing that these movies can not only make money, but they can be fun and entertaining. And, it definitely is, as we talk about, these Universal monster movies from the 30s, have times changed?
Yes.
For, not only necessarily, acting wise and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, granted, I think these ones we kind of go back to these old chops because, it was more about, the actor emoting in a little bit of makeup, and the makeup wasn't always nearly as good now as compared to what it was, and the blood and the gore, where they kind of had to convey their message through, maybe like some gestures or a way they speak or the way the eyes look and stuff like that, where nowadays it's all about just blood and guts and nudity. But back in Universal time, it was all about the actor.
Absolutely, for sure. And this is actors galore when it comes to the stars of these two movies. I mean, you really, as far as the contributions, as far as the catalogs, it really doesn't get much bigger at that time than Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, with the exception of course, he really got his foot in the door further down the line. But the only person that I can really say, as far as that macabre style, that could even be in the conversation with Bella and Boris would be Vincent Price. But
yeah, that him or a Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney was in a lot of stuff too as well.
True. And Lon Chaney, and honestly, even right to his son, like such a quick transition to his son really picking right up after him when it comes to the horror, the macabre and stuff like that. So that probably would be, that'd be a pretty solid Mount Rushmore, as they like to say, if you're doing something specific as far as like old school macabre. But, again, that's completely, up to different people's opinions, how they got into things and whatnot. But perhaps, my friend, that might be a conversation for another day. But when it comes to this particular showdown, we are pitting up two of the best against each other, as we have Boris Karloff in The Bride of Frankenstein versus Bela Lugosi in Dracula. As we can probably assume from a lot of the Fangs and Infernos and Ghouls and Fiends, is that they probably looked at our announcement and were like, of course Vamp went that way. And you and I actually did talk about maybe going a different direction and just kind of being like, well, maybe we want to do Creature, maybe we want to do Wolfman, maybe we want to do Invisible Man. I was definitely open for that. Of course, when we spoke Universal Monsters, that was instantly, that's my pick. But we considered the idea of, throwing down a curveball to the Fangs and Infernos. But at the same time, we still kind of are. Because while we're not pitting Dracula versus Frankenstein, we're doing The Bride of Frankenstein. So we're having a little bit of fun this evening as we're putting, Bela Lugosi's Dracula up against The Bride of Frankenstein. And I think this is actually going to be a very, very cool conversation that we're about to get right into, because I consider Bride of Frankenstein to actually be very high up as a, better sequel option. And it's going to be, it's going to differentiate between different people's feelings. But Bride of Frankenstein is very, very good. It's a really excellent movie. It's a really very cool, direction that they took the franchise and all that kind of stuff. And we'll break into the details of that very, very shortly. But this is where it's going to be, Fangs and Inferno. So we're going to jump right into it. We've got 1931's Dracula. We got 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein. When it comes to Dracula, though, my friend, my biggest thing that I always find about this movie that's worth speaking about and also bringing up very quick is, while I do love this movie, a lot of people are going to be like, well, of course you do. And yes, of course I do. But this movie is very good as well. But it's such, in my opinion, it's a very dominant launching pad for what we know as vampires now. Because don't get me wrong, Nosferatu preceded it, about 10 years preceded it, with Max Schreck, and still had its, its fingers, its hands in the cookie jar. You've got your remakes of Nosferatu, you've got your Salem's Lot and stuff like that. But overall, when you just look at vampires, whether it be vampire events, whether it be movies in general that really try to capture that tradition, that vampiric lore, as we've referred to multiple times, it really all started with Bela Lugosi's Dracula.
Yeah. And unlike its predecessor, like you were talking about with the Nosferatu, there was some legal issues with the whether or not it's a copy of Bram Stoker's Dracula and whatnot like this, and there was some legal stuff where obviously in Universal's Dracula, it's definitely very Bram Stoker's Dracula, you know what I mean? And the cool thing about it was, I guess there was still, even with Universal and the money Universal had, there was still a little bit of, they weren't 100% sure whether or not they were going to get the full rights to be able to do this movie, which is really cool because what did Universal do, man? They were ballers. They were like, fuck it, man. We're going to make this version and we're going to pull out a Spanish version at the same exact time, just in case legally we can't do this version. They can still release the Spanish version since it was made in Spain and they have different kind of copywriting laws and they can get around different things. So I thought that was kind of cool though. Like, because if you see like Dracula that came out, there's 31 in Dracula. There's 2 Draculas and you're like, wait. They made 2 Draculas, and I'm like, well, yeah. At the same time that they were filming this version of it, they were filming a secret Spanish version of it just in case, which I thought was cool. But that was the thing about this movie, where like, yeah, I mean, this movie was all, I mean, granted, if you look at through all vampire movies, even with Nosferatu, you look at Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman, and all these ones like that. I mean, even the Christopher Lee Hammer Time films and stuff like that of Dracula. I don't care who you are, you're more than likely 100% always wrong. Bela Lugosi is Dracula and will always be the OG killer Dracula. Not necessarily because we love Bela Lugosi more. It was just no one could dominate the way that he dominated such a role. You know what I mean? It was just like the eyes of him just emoting with his eyes, and there's not a lot of dialogue in this movie versus like Bram Stoker's Dracula, where Dracula's talking ad nauseum. In this movie, he's definitely talking a little bit, but it's more of like just the way that he spoke, with the famous the creatures of the night, and the way he was just talking to him the whole entire time. But a lot of his stuff was more just the way he moved. Yeah. The way he just walked around the the stage, walked around the the movie and stuff like that throughout it. And like I said, those piercing eyes were just that draw effect that, like, I mean, he's right behind me right there. You could see the Bela Lugosi right there. I mean, that's, like I said, I mean, granted, I mean, there are better vampire movies than Dracula.
Sure.
As a whole. But I think no one is good as portraying the role as Bela Lugosi did.
No, absolutely. And Devil, I love the fact that you brought that up. That was definitely something that I was going to shed some light on as well. Is I loved whoever's idea it was, and I've watched so much vampire stuff, as everybody knows, just over the years, documentaries and whatnot, that I might have even heard it. It's just kind of lost in the clutter of all the masses in my brain. But whoever's idea it was, whether it was the director, whether it was Bela himself, whether it was the lighting guy, however it was designed, the way that they put the emphasis on Bela's look, his stare, and the fact that they put a beam of light specifically, or, across his eyes when he was reacting to things, whether it was Renfield, cutting his finger and blood being exposed, or thinking about, the purchase of Carfax Abbey and what that's going to allow, sacrificing Lucy, trying to get to Mina, so on and so forth. The looks that Bela gave were fantastic and would have been so great just on his own. But the idea, the concept of highlighting it with that beam of light, I've always absolutely loved that. And I have always kind of wished that they would do more. And trust me, with everything on the internet, you can find posters, pictures, stuff of that look with the light if you wanted to hang it up. But I just kind of wish they would use it more in things. I just think it's such a cool effect. And I do actually think it was a little bit ahead of its time, because as cinematography would grow and advance, I feel like they started taking more advantage, which I thought was a cool effect, of the zoom in. Zoom in on the look, maybe zoom in on the face. But the fact that they really didn't do that, it was still an overall kind of portrayal of Bela. But to put that flash across his eyes, or edit it the way that they did it, however it was done, dude, such a cool effect.
Yeah, and I guess I love it. And then you're like I said, this movie came out in 1931, so it's it definitely preceded everything before a lot of other things came out. But it's just like going back and rewatching this movie now, I was just kind of like laughing about certain things. Like I was saying earlier, with the wolf crying, the children of the night, they sound wonderful. Everybody knows that iconic scene, but I was just laughing because obviously Renfield's like, there's no wolves in London, and I'm like, there might not be any wolves in London, but there are definitely werewolves in London, So it's like, you got to watch out for those werewolves.
Oh yeah, it's so funny too. But overall, when it comes to the movie, like, it's got a quality story arc. I really like the way they do it. For that time, it's not going to be excessively bloody. It's not designed that way, but it still allows for the points to get across. They use blood properly. They use it applicably. I don't have to, you and I don't have to worry about like blood that looks like fucking paint when it comes to this movie. It's just kind of cool when it comes to the practical effects, however they did the blood. Like you and I have talked before about Psycho, where it's a black and white movie. So the use of blood as chocolate syrup still comes across proper when it comes to that kind of stuff. But anyway, I like the story arc of this quite a bit. I think it's got such a cool story to tell. Overall, in the comparison, I love the overall story being told among multiple characters, where Bride of Frankenstein's a little bit more focused, rightfully so, of which we'll discuss, but is more of a focused direction. I did love the overall story arc that comes with Dracula, where it starts off with Renfield. He's just making his way towards the castle because he has business to conduct. He's literally basically kind of like, like a person that sells houses, kind of a thing. And but the townspeople are like, well, you can go if you must, but we're not going to take you. Like, we don't like that area. We're aware of that area, and that person that you're looking for he's not revered by us. We're afraid of him. We don't like him. And then, of course, ultimately finding his way there, the relationship developed between himself and Dracula, the introduction, ironically enough, of the brides, Dracula's brides, and then Renfield becoming, basically his familiar, ultimately leading up to when Dracula starts doing his damage in London once he's moved, taken the Demeter to move and now live in London. and be a threat to Dr. Seward, Mina, Lucy, and Harker.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about this movie too. Like, if going back and watching it now again too, like I just feel like it's just not as praised as much as it needs to be. Like, I mean, it's probably, as far as like this storyline, the Bram Stoker's Dracula, obviously it's been done now like 9 million times with every movie that's basically done it. But there's some things in this movie that like it's just so good. Like, one, like when Renfield is going to Dracula's castle, it's actually Dracula who is actually driving him the whole entire way, which I thought was kind of cool. Where every other movie has always been somebody else, or maybe Dracula disguised as somebody else, but a lot of times usually it's one of his henchmen or someone like that that's driving him along. So I always found that cool too. And to me, I think this is one of the best Renfield versions of all the time. I mean, he just plays the crazy man, the him just wanting to eat the bugs and eating the spiders and eating, taking the heads off of chickens and everything else. It's just like, dude, it's so, I mean, granted, like I said, when they made these movies later on and they can get a little bit more graphic, I'm not saying it's the best, you know, the darkest and sickest version of Renfield, because obviously Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman, Renfield they can do a lot more, so they were showing. But it's just the way that he was just creepy, and like the like almost stop time animation, but not really, like where he's just going crazy in this like insane asylum the whole entire time. It's like, yeah, you don't you know with the modern technology, even looking like in, like we're talking about with these classic movies and stuff like that. You look at like when these movies came out, people would watch like werewolf movie, this,
Yeah.
watch the werewolf, and it's like at that time, man, like that was some scary shit, man. Like that your parents or your grandparents, when that movie came out, man, that was scary. So like when you get the younger generation to watch, oh yeah, let's watch something that when you were a kid, you watched, and they just got done watching, they just watched the new werewolf movie that just came out, and they see
Yeah.
that, and then they're like, oh, that's based off of like, a werewolf movie from back when I was growing up, when Grandpa was growing up as a kid, watching those. All right, let's watch that, and then you watch this, and they're just like, what the hell? Like, is the graphics and all that kind of stuff like that, or that. But that's the thing, is that these kids don't appreciate like the craft. I mean, that's what these stories were more. They were more about that craftsmanship. They were more about how that actor could emote and do things, and how they kind of had to persuade you a little bit more that Renfield was crazier, versus nowadays where you can just CGI Renfield eating anything he wants to, and blood and guts everywhere, and make it more disgusting. But the actor in that movie is not really eating anything. Where in these movies, where you saw him probably eating bugs and stuff like that, other than some of that, the actor was more than likely probably really eating those bugs.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's funny too, brother. Like when I was watching the movie again, and it's a movie that I've seen countless times. Everybody knows how much I love Dracula Dead and Loving It, and how much me and Mrs. Vamp really enjoy that movie on a regular basis. And Peter McNichol is a fantastic Renfield, but it's crazy how well he had to mimic what was already established by the original Renfield, and how well he did, because it is a parody movie, so there are certain things that had to be emphasized. And Peter McNichol himself has that look, those features with his eyes, his kind of crooked mouth, like the way he's able to do stuff, was definitely the perfect casting for a comedy version of that character. But just the way that, the original Renfield had to, handle everything from the going crazy, and the laughter, and the kind of like tics and everything that he had to do when it came to that. So I always thought that Dwight Frye did such a cool job when it came to that. Just the whole like and master and wide-eyed and just absolutely crazy. So I always thought that Dwight did such a cool initial Renfield to really set the bar incredibly high, because you and I have discussed Nicholas Hoult multiple times, and he's fantastic. We love him. I'm a big fan of him myself, and loved his rendition of Renfield. And of course, it's all the same design, eating bugs, all that kind of stuff, obeying your master. But of course, it's a much more modern movie coming out in the 2010s, in the 2020s for that matter, that there's so much more ability to emphasize things with CGI. But then these guys literally had to use their voices, their looks, the way they pose their body. Because even for Peter McNichol, it's still, the early mid 90s, we had some more technology. Granted, it's a difference of like 70 years, but my point is it hadn't turned into what it is now. Now they can just do everything. And it's always really, really incredible. With watching what they do now and kind of the gifts they bestow on actors versus when actors were actors and they had to show up and shell out.
Yeah. That's the thing about this movie. Yeah, when you just add all that extra little things, and like you said, I mean, there's, watching this now, like I said, it's a story that's been told so many times. So when you're watching it, you kind of go, okay, yeah, I know the story. But like I said, it's one of those ones that's just so beautifully shot, throughout the whole entire thing, that it's just like so great. And just the way they just use things, like even like the castle, like when you see the castle outside, it looks like a real castle, but it's not even a real castle. It's a matte painting that they just used where he's driving, where the carriage is driving up to the castle. It's so cool how they just, like, at that time they didn't have CGI and didn't have all this crazy technology, but was still able to make things look realistic a lot of times. So I mean, some things were cheesy. Obviously the biggest problem I think with this Dracula is the bat scenes. The bat scenes are just so horribly. I got a bat on a string, week, in front of the camera. I mean, like I said, for the times there were some things that you just couldn't really do very well. I mean, the only other way you could probably do it was to like buy a bunch of real bats and just throw them in front of the camera every so often just to make it look like they're flying around, which I don't think they've been able to do. So yeah, you had to have this crazy rubber bat throughout the whole movie. Which
yeah, it's not good. But again, it just is what it is. And I can let that slide for the sake of just a quality movie, of which I do think this movie is very high quality. I love, like I said, I love the storytelling. I love all of the acting. And it is a little bit tricky as well watching a movie like this. Not even just myself, but I just mean people who love vampire movies in general, because that story has been done to death. But it's the original story, and it's so beautifully done. And there are times that I'm so grateful that color didn't exist at times, because there's certain things about movies that I feel like the impact isn't going to be as strong with a color movie, when you can distract people or brighten something because you can, as opposed to having the actors and actresses show their skills and their chops, which I think is really, really cool about this movie. And ultimately, we don't have to dig down deep when it comes to the end of the movie and the way it's designed. It's a very, in the saying of Beauty and the Beast, it's a tale as old as time. It's, the sacrifice of Lucy, the attempts to get to Mina, and Van Helsing and Harker getting in the way, ultimately leading to Dracula's demise, and the ability for Mina and Jonathan to in theory continue on happily ever after. It's very, very coolly done. I love the fade to black way as well that they did of the Dracula character, where you don't have that big boom or that crazy staking, You know, there's no major emphasis to any particular death scene. I loved that fade to black aspect about the movie. And again, that was much more common at that time, especially when you're doing to, you know, allegedly book adaptations of things. But I always thought that that movie was super cool. I love the closeout of it. I think it's there, you know, in my opinion, when it comes to that movie, the silence was deafening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, and you gotta realize too, at the time, the rating boards at that time were way different too. I mean, there's things that, even going into Psycho and stuff like that, when we talk about Alfred Hitchcock and stuff like that, where, you couldn't show, the blood had to be, very minimal. You couldn't show someone actually being killed on screen versus this kind of stuff. You had to like shoot it very oddly most of the time just to kind of get away with the rating. So it's like, yeah, granted it's not gonna have its Lost Boys ending. It's not gonna have its even Bram Stoker's kind of, more cinematic kind of ending, or Nosferatu-y kind of, like, with the newer stuff where it can give you a little bit more, a little more, bang for your buck, near dark explosion kind of shit where, yeah, he gets it, and he's gonna die, and you let the actor do his thing, and he's a goner and just fade away, like you said. It just like I said, it's a different time. Like I said, I mean, granted, if they probably were able to, yeah, they probably would have done it where, you would have seen him getting his head chopped off or something like that. But yeah, you couldn't see that kind of stuff in this movie. I mean, even, when we go into the Frankenstein stuff, Frankenstein's killing people, man.
Yeah.
It's very, very lame how he kills some of these people, but they can, like you said, they can only show and do so much on screen, because then they were like, oh yeah, you're not allowed to do that. No, you can't do that. So
No, absolutely, man, 100%. And as we move into the obituaries, got to give a shout out though, real quick, to my beloved devil for the debut of my beautiful little goblet snifter to enjoy that he showed me, and I subsequently had to purchase. Shall not be the end of my beloved vampy gothy goblet that you've seen, but I felt that there was no better episode to debut my happy little bat snifter than on the Universal Monsters, because as we all know, I never drink wine. But what the heck? Let me try it.
you gotta love that. Like, you're not gonna drink? No, I never drink wine.
But absolutely. So as we get into the obituaries, my friend, I mean, the thing is, these movies are classics. They started everything. I hold them both very, very high in this. There's a little bit of extra oomph that I do give to Dracula because of its history, what it gave everybody and gave all of us. And it really set the bar for everything that we know now. I love Max Schreck. Everybody knows that Nosferatu is my overall favorite vampire. But I really love the big just ascension of vampires that started with Bela, first and foremost, from the body language to the speech, the look, the execution, and the storytelling. I do actually give Dracula a very high score. I really do love this movie, and it's given me personally so much. So I do give it actually an 8.5 when it comes to this. The Universal Monster movies, especially all of them, the way that they were crafted, the design of them, were all very amazingly well done movies with great storytelling and amazing acting. I just think for the overall, and again, Frankenstein gets this love too, so there will be a circle around for me. But I mean, you get so much in with the history of vampires from this movie that not only do I love the movie as a movie, I really got to give it that extra half point for just starting the giant popularity flux of how we see vampires still to this day.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you on that too. Even even though it's probably going to be a detrimental for my movie when it comes to it, when we get the obituaries and rate it, stuff like that. But I mean, if anybody knows me, I mean, obviously, yes, when we put this out to the fangs and the ghouls, and they're like, oh, it's so obvious that the vampire is going to pick Dracula. Well, if the vampire didn't pick Dracula, I would have picked Dracula, because Dracula is my favorite Universal movie of all time. It is my favorite of all of them. You know what I mean? I'm a huge fan of the Frankenstein series. I'm a huge
Yes.
fan of Invisible Man, a huge fan of the Creature from the Black Lagoon and the Phantom of the Opera and Wolfman, all that stuff like that. But Bela Lugosi been one of my favorite actors of all time, and just this portrayal of Dracula is like ultimately my favorite portrayal of Dracula ever. Even though there are definitely some other ones that I do put up there in high regards too, but you know what I mean. Like as much as we have said before, you know with Nosferatu being that first movie and theoretically Max Schreck being the OG Dracula or that OG vampire. I mean, to me, even though that movie came out before Dracula and Bela Lugosi's Dracula, to me is the G. It is the goat of all vampires and vampire movies. So yeah, I agree. I mean, 8.5 is a solid for that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we probably could give it tens, but
Oh yeah.
these movies were made, almost 100 years ago. So
How
it's
crazy is that, dude?
it's insane,
You and
because I
I
mean
are
it's
still.
2025 right now. So this movie literally was in 6 years will be over 100 years old.
Yeah, I mean, Nosferatu just celebrated 100 years
Yep.
3 years ago.
Yep.
That's
So yeah, it's just crazy to think that we're watching these movies that that are potential, like I said, 100 years old and still take the time. I mean, you look at some of those other movies that came out probably. I mean, how many movies did Universal come out in 1931 that were even bigger? Like we were talking about before that. The great thing about Dracula is that this was the number 6 blockbuster movie of 1931, which
yeah,
is insane. And you look at some of those other movies that came out, and yeah, okay, maybe I mean I don't remember them offhand which movies were what, but yeah, none of them had the staying power as Dracula has now. So it's like,
no,
yeah, it's one of those things that maybe at that time it was the biggest grossing thing, and maybe it was the greatest movie of all time. This movie was that one, or that movie was that, and stuff like that. There's some people say like Gone with the Wind and stuff like that. I'm not shitting on Gone with the Wind and all that stuff
yeah,
like that, but people who are watching Gone with the Wind now, young kids aren't going to appreciate Gone with the Wind. Young
no,
kids will still at least appreciate the Universal movies. You know what I mean? They're fun. They're fun movies. So, like I said, yeah, just like I said, you got to go in to, especially if you're from a generation who didn't grow up with these Universal monsters and at least have seen these kind of growing up. You got to go in with it in a different kind of eye. Yeah,
yeah,
you realize that you're seeing, like we said, you're seeing a movie that is about 100 years ago. So it's not going to be it's not going to be what's his name, Skarsgård, sexy
yeah,
and bloody, but it's still gonna be fun.
yeah. It's gonna a little less wang, a little bit more fun and storytelling.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So that's the way that we're going to do it, Fangs. It's going to be an 8.5 currently for Bela Lugosi's Dracula. But let's continue on as we continue with our Universal monsters. And don't get me wrong, Fangs. Just, this is, even despite what Devil said, this is by no means going to be a flawless victory. Not even close, because the movie we're about to get into right now is absolutely fantastic. The fact of the matter is, it's like I said before, this movie is actually very high up on what I consider to be a better sequel. Again, that's up for interpretation. No worries there. But it is a continuation of the original Frankenstein story, and it's the introduction of a new character. The length of said character is going to be a very interesting conversation when we get to that. But we are going to break in right now as I hand it off to my beloved Devil for our conversation on The Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, like I said in previous with Dracula, Dracula is my favorite Universal monster movie of all time. Bela Lugosi is my favorite Bride of Frankenstein is my second favorite Universal movie of all time. I mean, no, no disregard for the original Frankenstein. I love that Frankenstein. I love the fact that Karloff continue on playing the, Frankenstein from Bride of Frankenstein as well. So, I mean, like I said, it's for me, I just kind of found it a little Bride of Frankenstein. I found just a little bit more of a fun movie, and just overall just shows a little bit more oomph and characterism in this movie. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know Karloff didn't like this one nearly as much as he liked the first one, because of the first one he was able to kind of keep his jaw, and he had teeth problems and stuff like that. So with this one, he had to talk, so he had to be able to do things and stuff like that. But I like it. It basically just showed you that, like, this monster that everybody thought was just this stupid creature wasn't really as stupid as he was, you know what I mean? And he's able to learn. There he is. There's Frankie. He's able to learn, and he's able to, grow and stuff like that. And I like this movie, when it comes to that part of it. Yeah. I mean, the beginning, and it's just like, just like most movies, I like the beginning of this movie where it's weird. It's kind of like it's kind of like breaking the fourth wall before breaking the fourth wall was kind of a thing, because in the beginning of this movie,
Really
you're not
quick,
really,
actually.
yeah, you're really not really understanding what the hell is going on. It's like these two guys talking to this one girl, and he's like, oh yeah, yeah. You find out that, like, that she's Mary Shelley. She's the one who created this book for Frankenstein, and they're talking about it, and they're like, oh yeah, with the characters like that, and he's talking about, retelling the kind of story, and while they're retelling, and they're showing clips of the original Frankenstein movie to it. And then they were like, she was like, oh yeah, you think that's good? I actually did, have a second story of how I would have continued that. And they're like, oh really? And then it kind of goes into the Bride of Frankenstein movie. And like, kind of like Halloween and Halloween 2, I love how it just continues straight on. So, that, it shows the building going down, and all the villagers are like, yay, the monster's dead. Oh, blah, blah. Oh, we need to go see the monster. And then they go in, and the monster's not dead, and he's just pounding people. And one lady's like, ah, and he throws her into the freaking hole. He's just like, get the hell out of the way, bitch. It's just like that. I mean, and then, it kind of goes into where Frankenstein's trying to figure out where he can go, and he meets a blind old man, and the blind old man takes him in because he can't see, and he's like, hey man, we can all be friends. I don't care. I'm blind, and you can't speak very well, so I'm going to teach you. And he teaches them, the stuff like that, which just kind of reminds me. I mean, I know this movie came out in 1935, and the movie I'm going to talk about kind of came out in the 1980s and 90s, but it kind of had that. When I'm rewatching it again, I'm like, that's probably where Lloyd Kaufman got his idea for Trauma, with Toxic Avenger and his girlfriend. His girlfriend's blind in the movie, and like, oh yeah, yeah, hero. And he's kind of this big scary monster, which kind of just reminded me a little bit of this, where, Frankenstein's Toxie, and the blind old guy is the blind hot chick that loves it. Except that these two aren't getting it on and doing anything naughty in this movie. But
Right.
I think it's kind of cool. He's just teaching them about stuff. Teaching them about fire, teaching them words, teaching about friends. And he kind of realizes that this guy. You start realizing that just like anybody else, Frankenstein just wants to be, loved, and and have friends, and do everything just like anybody else does. And just like anything, bad shit always happens, and some people come to the house, and and fuck shit up, and
Yep.
he's got to burn it down.
No, for sure. And that's the thing. Yeah, I love the hermit scene. I think it's really cool because I love the kind of like working with him, kind of educational type stuff. But I also love the fact that, like, and again, don't get me wrong, it was probably not that hard to make sure that this wasn't a continuity error, because it was such a big deal and a major thing in the first Frankenstein. Is I love the fact that as he's teaching him about food, and he's like, oh, food, good. Ooh, drink, wine, okay, nice. Ew, cigarette. Ugh. even though it was a flame from a match, it was that freaking big. And his reaction was still like, no, no, no. And Hermit's like, nah, dude, like, it's not about that. It's about this, It's we haven't quite making our making our way to to the happy green plant, but it's still kind of like, no, man, like cigar smoke, like tobacco, like you will like this. You can't enjoy it without a little bit of that. But I loved the fact that he reacted immediately off of the match, despite the fact that it was still only that big. It was great. And then, of course, as he's teaching him about, like, hey, fire, the fireplace. And he's like reacting more. And he's like, no, 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 this is a good thing. It hurts, yes, but what it gives you is everything. But yeah, so I think that's great. I mean, everything about like the overall buildup, I think is crazy. And because there's also like these little interesting like references that are either planned or not planned, but can be, dissected in different ways, where you've got the monster, strapped up to the board and pulled up by chains, but which has like a very, crucifixion type feel to it. But ultimately it's about Frankenstein's monster becoming much just more educated and learning, while he's still this misunderstood guy, this character, this like, this fact of the matter is like, he's not, he's not a demon. He's not a satanic type of creature like creation. He was made by man. He wasn't a gift from God, but he wasn't put on this earth to be this scary character of like demonic intent. He was a scientific creation. And now he's just trying to learn about everything. But also at the same time, I find it very interesting that there's a secondary sub-story. Well, technically there's 3 sub-stories, all of which we'll discuss. But there's this secondary sub-story of Victor Frankenstein, with his new wife, and trying to kind of like continue or learn or enjoy this new life outside of science. Because he still loves science, he still loves doing his thing, but it's like a secondary thing for him. It's not so much a hobby, but it's like just the job, as opposed to being like the job. So he's kind of got this secondary life, but then in comes this character of who he learned from, who's still very much about the job, and realizes that Victor's success in life here could lead to success for him if they team up and do it again.
Yeah, and and just like when we were talking about Dracula and the mishaps of the bat scene,
yes.
Here enters the mishap of the Bride of Frankenstein thing. Yes, you have the doctor. He's talking about how he does his scientific stuff, and he wants to combine his scientific knowledge that he was able to create a brain from these antimatters and stuff like that, and he wants to combine his technology to building Victor Frankenstein did with the monster and stuff like that. So he opens up these little bottles of these little small creature like people that are trapped, and you got like this little like king and girl, and you got a ballerina dancing, and it's just so horribly like like it's bad CGI when there wasn't any CGI, you know what I mean? Even when he goes and grabs the king and puts him back into the jar again, it's like, oh my god, yeah, like I said, it's the equivalent of the bat scene. You're just like, it kind of goes like, what the hell? I mean, it's kind of cool to begin with because you see them in their little jars and they're all interacting, and it's like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like like Shrinking Woman kind of like thing, like in Renegade did. So you're like, okay, it's kind of cool. But then it's like I said, once the king gets out and he's got to grab him and put him back in the jar, you're like, what the hell? And and then like I said, you have this guy that's he's kind of forcing, Victor to go back into his old ways. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing about in this version of in this movie, this version of Frankenstein is definitely a lot more different, where Frankenstein to begin with, he was that mad scientist throughout the whole entire time. He was one of those people who were more dedicated to his work than he was anything else. You know what I mean? He didn't want to
It's a
eat. He didn't want
lie.
to
It's
sleep.
a lie.
Yeah, he didn't care about his woman. He didn't care about anything. He wanted to be famous, and that was this is his way of being famous, was creating life. He basically wanted to become God, and then once he became God, he realized, oh shit, maybe this isn't a good thing. You know what I mean? So his character in this one is kind of cool. I like his his development in this movie, even though he is, he does eventually help, the other scientist in becoming and doing this, making this bride, or this new creature that he wants to make with him. He does go along, but he's definitely a lot more hectic. And the thing I like about this too is he just, it's one of those things where it's like, he created this monster and realized this monster did a lot of bad things. Not saying that the Frankenstein was a bad guy. It was just, reacting to people mobbing him all the time. You had the scene in the original one where, supposedly he's drowning a little girl. Like he
Oh my
didn't,
God, dude.
which
Could
he
you
didn't,
imagine that nowadays?
which he didn't, he wasn't intentional. Like he wasn't like, I'm gonna drown this little bitch. You know what I mean? He's just,
Yeah.
he's trying. Like I said, even in this movie, he's trying to be helpful. And even when these guys come after him, and he does all he starts going crazy and starts, going nuts, and it ends up burning down that, the hermit's house and stuff like that. So it's just like a lot of times it's just bad things just happen to him. He's just not necessarily, he's just, he's misunderstood when he comes to a lot of this stuff where, in this one, you got like that. But I like it because like Frankenstein is just like, keep him away from me, whatever you do, yeah, I'll do this. I'm gonna do this, but I don't want anything to do with it. So it's kind of like, which just drives, the monster, even more crazier, because it's just like, it's like a kid, he's very, you got, even when he's learning from the hermit, he's teaching him like a child. He's
Yeah.
basically like, he's like in a child's mind. So to him, it's kind of heartbreaking, for as if you look through it, the monsters aspect of it, where his father kind of doesn't want anything to do with him. He feels neglected, like this guy doesn't want to do with me. Well, then yeah, we need to do something, and that's when they come up with the theory, and they're like, hey man, we're gonna make you a bride and a friend, and he's like, ooh, friend, and he's thinking, this is a good thing, because most of the time, even though I'm not a bad guy, people first see me to begin with, and they look at me and I'm hideous. Even himself, when he sees him, like in the beginning of the movie, he sees his reflection in the water, and he starts smashing the water. He's like, I'm ugly, he doesn't like the way he looks. So he's thinking, okay, maybe if we think of, I don't look that great. He made me, I look kind of shitty. So at least if he makes this girl, he's going to make a girl that's probably going to be kind of shitty too. And we can just be shitty, ugly together.
No, for sure. And honestly, Devil, on that note, let's talk about the namesake of this movie, because it's a very interesting point of conversation. Because here's the thing: the movie's called The Bride of Frankenstein. You can't do a movie called The Bride of Frankenstein, make it all about Victor and Frankenstein's monster, and then go to credits. Got to bring in that character. Here's the interesting thing. One of the things I do love, and chalk it up to forward thinking, marketability, or maybe just that appeal, The Bride of Frankenstein is not exactly what I would call a major player in this movie, yet has been marketed and merchandised to death, no pun intended. But I mean, in good ways. I mean, T-shirts, Funko Pops, people have tattoos, all that kind of stuff. People know The Bride of Frankenstein. They know, Frankenstein and the Bride. But like I said before, my friend, she's not exactly what you would call a major player in this movie.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, I mean, like I can understand like the appeal for people, like, wanting your Bela Lugosi tattoo, your Dracula tattoo, your Frankenstein tattoo, you know, I got my Invisible Man tattoo right here. You can't see him, but because he's invisible. Anyway, but like, but with the bride, yeah, with the Bride of Frankenstein, like as I said, it's weird. It's like this movie is called The Bride of Frankenstein. Literally is like an hour and like 20 minutes long, and it takes about an hour and 14 minutes to get into the bride. Literally only has a scene of becoming alive. You see her, you see the iconic look with the black and white hair straight all the way up, like the Marge Simpson kind of look
Yeah.
to her, and she sees Frankie, screams, ah, and then they kind of calm her down again a little bit, and then she sees him again, ah, and he realizes like, fuck this, nobody wants me, I'm just gonna kill everything. But it's so cool, it's so weird because like you said, it's like this is huge marketing for that. And the crazy thing about it too, even in the beginning of this movie, and in the end, because the beginning credits and the end credits were basically the same, so it was kind of weird that they have credits in the beginning and the end. But the credits in the movie, you don't even have who the bride was. It was like the bride and then question mark. So it told you like who all the actors were in this movie, but they didn't want to kind of give away who was gonna play the bride, which I mean, you can, nowadays with technology of being on the DVD and stuff like that, you might not have known who it was, but with modern technology with Wikipedia and IMDb and all that kind of stuff like that, you do find out that the bride was the girl in the very beginning that's telling the story, who is also Mary Shelley in this movie. So but it was kind of cool that they don't like, it's like, who's going to be the bride, this whole emphasis of like who they're going to create and who they're going to make. And like I said, all this hoopla and hoopla and koopla and doing all this stuff and doing the electricity and making all that stuff like that. And like I said, and going into it where it's like, yeah, she literally has like like I said, I mean, it's 6 minutes left in the movie, you finally see her, and out of that last 6 minutes, you probably get maybe 2 minutes of her, and then that's basically it. And then it gets to the point where, like I said, with Frankenstein getting pissed, going, "Oh, I'm gonna," and the one scientist says, "Don't do that. You're gonna destroy the whole entire building." He's like, "Well, fuck it,
Good.
everybody." He's like, "Good, man. It was kill us all, man. I'm a monster. She's a monster. This guy who wants to create a monster. The only person he lets live." He's like, "You know what? I'm gonna let Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, and I'm gonna let his wife live," which is kind of just basically shows you that like ultimately like Frankenstein is probably the best person in this whole entire series because
Yeah.
like he's what I mean, like he's misstood, but yeah, like I said, he has all rights to probably like, fuck it, I'm gonna kill Frankenstein just as much because this is like, quote unquote my father and he wants nothing to do with me. But ultimately he said, he did what he wanted. He said Frankenstein said he would make him a mate. He did. Whether, he didn't say he was going to make a mate that's going to love him and everything's going to turn out to be good. So, I mean, I guess theoretically, Frankenstein did, Dr. Frankenstein, lived by his word. So he's like, you know what, I'm going to let you go and let you go and be happy with your wife. You did what you said you were going to do. You made me a companion, even though she's a freak and doesn't like me. And, screams at me every time she sees me, but wait till she sees what she looks like. It's like it's like the whole entire time, like, have you seen a
I
mirror,
already
bitch?
know.
I know what I look like, lady. Wait, you don't know what you look like. But anyway, yeah. And then it just, ultimately the end is, he pulls the lever and boom, there goes the castle and down goes, the Bride of Frankenstein, which is kind of funny because, there's been, other Frankenstein movies, obviously throughout the Universal catalog, but they never brought Bride again, which is just crazy. She's in one movie for about 3 minutes and is as almost as iconic as Frankenstein himself is,
Yeah. No,
which
it's
is crazy.
so crazy with that. One of the things too about that scene that I really love, because I really got to give a shout out to, very similar to like what we talked about with Bella, with the look of the eyes and stuff like that, is again whether it was done by Boris because he's that good, whether it was designed to be put in there, whether they found a way to edit it. there was something very emotional and kind of humbling about the scene when he's pulling the lever to destroy the castle or the lab, and a tear comes down his eye right before he does it. It's still so crazy to me. It's still something that's genuinely burned into my brain when it comes to that scene, because I'm like, that's such an attention to detail. Because basically he's like, look, just like you said, this guy's did everything I asked him to, or didn't ask him to, but he looked out for me. It didn't work out. Look, we're creatures. Like, we're not made for this world. So we need to leave this world. You, however, are an asshole. So you're going to come with us. But where he seemed to realize that Victor ultimately had more good intentions than bad intentions. But it's a little weird too, because again, I do love this movie, but it's a little bit of a plot hole, a little bit of kind of bad writing. Again, if it's kind of the point of what they're trying to convey, I super get it, and it's great. But it's one of those weird little things though, of like, well, Frankenstein's monster had to learn things. Bride of Frankenstein really wasn't given that opportunity. She was just kind of offed because it seemed like he got overly frustrated, didn't get the reaction that he wanted, still realized that this guy was an asshole, but was like, you know what, we're just freaks of nature, and the world will never accept us. We all just need to go away. But this genuinely good person deserves a second chance to live this nice life with his wife, which I can appreciate. But it's a little hypocritical with Frankenstein's monster. And again, there's no guarantees that his brain had developed enough to realize that. He might have only been realizing that she does not like him and that he won't be happy if she's disgusted by him. But it's sort of a weird little thing because, again, just like you said, she's not in any other Frankenstein movies, and there are more. Not even talking about modern day movies, just the old school Universal Monsters Frankenstein movies do have more. And there is no acknowledgement of the Bride of Frankenstein after this movie. So it's just kind of an interesting way to do it, where she's not really given a chance. She's just kind of thrown in the bin as like a failed experiment. So it's just kind of interesting with that.
Yeah. And that's the thing too about it, when you think about it too, like when you're going, with these, with the Dracula ones and the Frankenstein, it's like, yeah, you got to think too, yeah, with the Frankenstein stories, I mean, it's weird because it's not nearly as played as much as the Dracula. You still have all these movies every year that are coming out that are based off of the Bram Stoker's Dracula and or the Nosferatu character, things like that, where like Frankenstein, you really only have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which came out, in the 90s with Robert De Niro playing Frankenstein, and then maybe Monster Squad, if you want to add that into a Frankenstein. That's really the only two Frankenstein movies you have.
Yep.
I mean, now there are 9 million other movies about Franken stuff. There's Frankenfish and Franken werewolf and Franken, Krampus or whatever else you want to. There's a lot of Franken movies, but yeah, there's no real movies other than that, which is just crazy because if you think about all the other Universal movies, you know what I mean? You think of Dracula, obviously we just said, with all the Dracula movies and movies that are based off of Dracula. You got Wolfman. There's a ton of Wolfman movies. There's a Wolfman that just came out. There was a Wolfman that came out a few years ago with Benicio del Toro. There's, Ginger Snaps, which is a wolf movie-ish. You've got The Wolf with Jack Nicholson, which was kind of a Wolfman off version of it. You got Creature of the Black Lagoon. That one kind of has a little bit of movies that, you have like the the Del Toro film, the Shape of Water is a very modern day version of that. Invisible Man, you have the Invisible Man, the movie came out. You have the Hollow Man movies that came out.
Yeah.
So
I
you
mean,
have a lot of that.
you do still have Monster Squad a bit too for Creature.
Yeah, with Monster Squad with Creature. But yeah, with Frankenstein, there's not too many movies that, like I said, those are the only two movies that I can think of non-universal that have ever delved into the Frankenstein movie, which, like I said, would be Monster Squad and that. So it's kind of like, even in reality, Frankenstein's monster can't get no respect.
Right. Yeah, he really is just kind of like the thing. Yeah, his only real companion probably is Creature from the Black Lagoon, because it's the only other monster that's frankly had minimal,
Yeah, he definitely hasn't had as much love as compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. But overall, I mean, the movie's great. It's so fun. The one thing too about this movie is, like, if you're into like action, if you're into things going on, I will say though, for the record, that The Bride of Frankenstein probably does have that over Bella's Dracula. As far as things going on, things to like catch your attention, action. But again, that's part of that storytelling, because you've got, the the mob, the riot squad, like coming after Frankenstein, that chained up scene, torches, all that kind of stuff. So for people that are into Universal Monsters, maybe dabbling their foot into it a little bit, that are, more modern day horror fans, Bride of Frankenstein's probably going to be a little bit more eye catching from start to finish, just for the sake of it does have more of those action elements to it. Dracula just has such a solid and quality high of storytelling that's one of the things that I really dug about this particular showdown. Is you've got two different designs, you've got two different villains / heroes, kind of depending on how you're looking at it, and just two different stories to tell, which I think was super duper cool. But that is one thing I always thought very highly of The Bride of Frankenstein, as well. It's frankly very ill titled, but the movie itself is a very high quality as far as like action and things going along, and like the learning and the education and the building of the Frankenstein character, that I always thought was super duper cool, man. And I always, thought very highly of the movie in that regard, for sure. But let's talk a little bit about the obituaries, man. How do you look at Bride of Frankenstein to start off, man, as we decide finally, who gets the nod in this showdown? But what do you like about the Bride of Frankenstein, and how do you see it?
Yeah, man. Like I said, I mean, when it comes down to it, like I said, it's like you said, it's such a weird movie to like like I said, most people would assume that if Dracula, the first movie that you're gonna like, Frankenstein the first Frankenstein's gonna be the ultimate one you like. And like I said, ultimately, like the storyline of Frankenstein, yeah, I like it. I just liked the way that they did this second one and they shot it and stuff like that.
Agreed.
Yeah, like I said, my only gripe with it is that if you were gonna make a movie that was an hour and 20 minutes, make at least 30-40 minutes of that The Bride of Frankenstein. Make her at least go out and do stuff. Maybe have her do some of the same stuff that Frankenstein went through. She gets scared of Frankenstein, runs away, and the mob sees her and goes, and tries to kill her. Get like things like that where, yeah, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get some of that a little bit. I think there should have been a little bit more time with the Bride of Frankenstein, being the fact that she's the main character in your movie. She's the title of your movie and is literally in the movie for like I said, like 2 or 3 minutes at tops. So. It's kind of weird, but the crazy thing though is that like I mean, there's not too many characters, like I said, in cinema history that has less time in a film that has so much pop culture to it, like The Bride.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you said, there's so many people that have like Bride of Frankenstein, statues, posters, tattoos, artwork, shirts, all that kind of stuff like that for a character that, like I said, has absolutely no screen time whatsoever, really.
To be
It's,
honest,
it's
Devil, I think the closest to that would really be Michael Keaton in the first Beetlejuice. Because I think he's on screen for nothing more than about 7 minutes or 8 minutes or something in that
yeah,
first movie. That's probably the only person who I can really think of that's popular
yeah.
that
And like
has
I said, and
little.
that's even crazy too, because even you even think with Beetlejuice, like you said, yeah, he's in the movie for 9 minutes and got all that and all, so like that. I mean, he's still in the movie 3 times longer than the bride is in the movie. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I haven't even time. Like I said, the only reason why I know was because whenever they go, it's alive, and she comes down, it's 1:14, and the movie ends at 1:20. So she may not even get. I mean, I'm only saying 6 minutes because that's how much longer the movie is.
Yeah.
Out of that 6 minutes, she's probably maybe only got like probably a minute and a half, probably a screen time, if even that.
Probably.
Three minutes is probably even giving her way too much screen time to begin with. She probably, once she's actually like, I mean, the 3 minutes is probably including her being in the undercovers and doing all that crap like that. So like screen time for her, like legitimately standing up and seeing her as her character, she probably has maybe a minute of screen time, 2 minutes tops.
You see
So
her standing, she does that kind of that cackle noise,
yeah,
screams at Frankenstein, calms down, screams again, gets blown up.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's insane. You can't. There's no other character that I can think of. I mean, we've always talked about characters being very small roles, but having such a huge impact in people's lives and personal lives, and in cinematic history. But I don't think anybody can top her with the amount of time they have, that so many people elate to it. And there's a whole Joker, like you said, with Frankenstein killing her without giving it to him. There's a whole there's a whole feminist side you can do it, like, oh, of course a man's gonna just tell a woman when she can live and die or whatever like that. Well, just because she doesn't like you doesn't mean that she can't live with you. There's all those kind of jokes you can kind of throw in there, with the stuff like that. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that that this movie that's titled that, it's like titling a movie like Freddy Krueger and having Freddy Krueger in it for like 5 seconds. You know what I mean? It's like, why? What? No, what? So it's like, it's so weird. But yeah, overall, like I said, I've always loved this movie. I think it's fun. I love, like I said, I love in the beginning when Frankenstein's just fucking throwing people in freaking wells and holes, and he's just like, fuck you, I'm getting, get out of here. He's scaring those little kids on the path. They're like, rah, bitches. It's like, oh yeah, it's like I said, it's fun. Like I said, the title could have maybe done something a little bit different. Like I said, I'm okay with it being called The Bride of Frankenstein, because ultimately that's what the movie was theoretically about them creating a bride for
Like
Frankenstein.
building to.
But yeah, a little bit more time for the bride would have been nice. But yeah, like I said, overall, I'm definitely still going to give this an 8.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. I really am. Like, totally. I think the movie's great. I really enjoy it, like, regularly. Like I said, it's right there on my list of like better sequels. And that was a struggling episode for me, because both of us were dialed in, because we both have the same favorite second movie, like better sequel. But that was a great showdown that we had there. But like, it was one of those things where, like, when The Bride of Frankenstein, it did hit my radar as well. That could be fun for that episode, because I do believe that. I'm glad it wasn't strong enough on me, because it works so much more proper, obviously, for this episode, which is really great, because the movie is great. It's solid. Boris is fantastic. And it's a little disheartening to hear that he doesn't hold this movie in as high regard as Frankenstein, because of the fact, and again, I didn't have to do it, so I understand the struggles that he had to deal with having to talk and speak and chew and drink with prosthetics that were difficult for him. I really do get it. But it's like, it still hurts my heart a little bit that he doesn't love this movie, because we love this movie. But I definitely am with you, man. I think 8 is a great one score for this movie. I fully agree with you on it, man, because it, you know, again, like I said, it's ill-titled, you know, and even if, I mean, the movie is short by today's standards anyway, which I think is what makes her lack of appearance so crazy. So even if they don't set it up to where there's a good chunk or half of the movie for her, yeah, definitely with you that I feel like they could have done more, found a way for her to become alive, try to wander, try to figure things out as he's making his way back. And then there could be that conflict where maybe he still reacts the same way and still ultimately does the deed the same way. So it's a little bit of a bummer to have this character who's very iconic, who practically doesn't even exist in her own movie, but still speaks to the appeal and the ability for a character to become iconic almost as a flash in the pan, which is very, very interesting, brother. But I'm right there with you, man. I'm down for the cause. 8 for The Bride of Frankenstein. So Fangs Infernos, that's the way we're going to give it. It is a victory to the vampire today, as Bela Lugosi's Dracula takes out Boris Karloff's The Bride of Frankenstein by a score of 8.5 to 8 on Universal Monsters. But this was a great one as always. We really enjoyed it. Universal Monsters are very, very big in the lives of Vampire and Devil. So we really hope you guys enjoyed this one, because we definitely did. As always, a big shout out and appreciation to our beloved partners and sponsors. We love you guys and thank you for everything you do. Horns up. Bangs out.
Devil, my friend. Fashion. Things to wear. Possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rockin' Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies. We got some shirts. We got some tanks coming up. We got some booty shorts. We got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast.
All right, Fangs, let's get down to another coffin nails. Let's go back to the blackout. Let's go to 2020. Let's talk about vampires versus the Bronx. This one was interesting. Basically, it's about this kid, Miguel. Lives in the Bronx. He's putting together this fundraiser, like a block party to save the local bodega. It's kind of like the local convenience store. Now, basically, what's been going on in the Bronx is like all these local businesses, independently owned businesses, have all been getting like bought out by this like rich guy. He, works for this big corporation company. And I'll give them credit. I love my vampiric lore, and the fact that their logo is the actual like picture of Vlad the Impaler, like the classic photo of Vlad Dracula, is very cool. So I did love that. So basically what's going on is this company is also in cahoots with actual vampires. So when they get the owners of these businesses to sign over the paperwork, a vampire swoops in and kills them. So the company doesn't even have to pay out for buying this. They've already got the paperwork with the signature, clarifying the deal. So, and showing that, hey, we own this now. And these kids basically stumble across the vampire's plan and realize that what they're doing is they're clearing out all of these houses in order to make a big, like massive building that's going to have levels upon levels of coffins for vampires to live as they take over the Bronx. And ultimately, it's these kids that are getting everybody together, getting everybody to understand their story and side with them to be able to go and take out these vampires one by one. The kills are good. It's a very great throwback, in my opinion, to the Blade series, where like when the vampires are dying, they're exploding into ashes. which I definitely love, because I do love the Blade series. But overall, it's a cool movie. It's a lot of fun. It does lose points at the end because when it comes to the final kill of the head vampire, it was so weak and kind of like goofy that it actually took away a little bit of the fantasy. But overall, look, it's well acted. It's well shot. It's got a little bit of unique, modern day humor that I can kind of appreciate. But it does lose a little bit of points because of the weak killing of the head vampire. So a 6.5 is what I'm going to give it when it comes to Vampires versus the Bronx. Ghouls and Fangs, Vampire and the Devil here. We got a little question for you. Devil, there's kind of a triangle, a three-headed monster per se, when it comes to Baltimore, that I don't think people necessarily realize. We've got Edgar Allan Poe, we've got John Waters, but what else do we have?
We got the Ouija boards, oh yeah.
Absolutely. Starting in Baltimore way back in the day, a lot of people are unfamiliar with William Fuld and Elijah Bond, who patented, and the birth of the Ouija board was right here in Baltimore. Devil and Vampire coming at you from the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, courtesy of our friend John Kozik, who invited us out to check it out and shoot a little conversation action to let you guys all know. Of course, you've seen on our socials that we have partnered with both museums, and we couldn't be more appreciative to John for that opportunity. So whenever you're here in Baltimore, of course, right attached to the Bazaar Oddity Shop off of the Avenue, you have Witchboard Museum Baltimore. And when you're in Witch City, USA, up in Salem, Massachusetts, that's when you get to visit the Salem Witchboard Museum.
Oh yeah, if you want to see some cool stuff, see some cool boards, get some cool history, go see our boy John. Man, that guy is really awesome, man. That dude knows his boards, he knows his history, he's about preserving the society of witch boards and the talking boards and all that goodness. And we love it. We love the fact that, they were gonna bring in this museum here in Baltimore, so all the Baltimore fans or all your East Coast fans or maybe not as far away, going up to Salem, come out to Baltimore and check it out, you know what I mean? Because there's some cool stuff in this museum, and you gotta check it out, because the devil and the vampire said so.
That is facts right there, my friend. Again, absolutely attached to the Bazaar Oddities shop in the Avenue in Hamden for the Baltimore established Witchboard Museum, or off of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts for the Salem Witchboard Museum. Horns up, fangs out.